Well, so we're going to think about salt and Jesus calling his followers to be the salt of the earth. You know, I learnt a lot about salt when I was at school. It didn't come up much, except now and again in chemistry, but salt got me into big trouble when I was 11. I spilt a bit of salt at lunch one day, and somebody on the table with me helpfully suggested that I should throw it over my shoulder. I misunderstood. I threw the salt pot over my shoulder. This was spotted by a prefect who was not impressed, and the punishment actually was to write an essay about salt. Anyway, this will give you a taste of the things to come, because I'm going to pepper my talk about salt with corny jokes. Did you hear that the chlorine molecule was hit by the sodium molecule? The police are calling it assault. Pure, thank you, it does get worse. You're right, Maggie. Pure salt is sodium chloride, found everywhere in the sea, in rocks, inside our bodies, outside, of course, when we sweat, and is present in every living thing virtually, because sodium is a vital element for life. It is actually a soft, silvery white metal, and it's highly reactive, and in chemistry we used to try and make it inflame and burn the lab down, but we never quite succeeded. It is changed, though, completely when it's combined with chlorine, because it becomes the small little white crystals that we know as salt. So just in case you can't remember what salt is like, there we go, some salt. Okay? And it's very interesting, isn't it, salt? Because it does dissolve well in water, and obviously we know the sea is like that. But you also have the fact that when you put salt down, it helps to melt ice, because salty water has a higher freezing point. Anyway, you can look up the chemistry of salt. But I want to turn and think more about Jesus, what he would have known about salt in the first century, because obviously they didn't have the sort of chemistry lessons that I'm talking about. And to start off with, I just wonder, what would you think if you're at work or you have been working, if your boss paid you with a bag of salt? You'd think it very odd, wouldn't you? But that's what Roman soldiers were given as part of their pay, because salt was very, very valuable. And that's, of course, where the word salary comes from. It roughly means salt money in translating from the Latin. So I think one of the things we need to start off with is remembering you and I are very, very valuable to Jesus. We're very precious because he died for us. And also, he knows that we can do his work in this world. Moving on. Salt was important in seasoning food, making it taste better. Now, who likes their chips with a bit of salt? Yeah, you think so? Okay, now we're going to investigate crisps. Anybody wish, I think Sarah is one of my keen advocates of crisps. Anybody like to join Sarah with a crisp experiment? Okay, come forward, please. And you get as your reward a bag of crisps. Now I suggest you pour the crisps out and hang on to your bag of salt. These are salt and shake crisps, okay? Just rescue your bag of salt. Yeah, yes, but rescue your bag of salt. Well, as many as you wish. I mean, you've got to eat them. Okay, hold on to the bag of salt. Don't put it on yet. Now, I want you to tell me what they taste like without salt. So try a crisp.
Okay.
Okay-ish.
Bit boring.
Bit boring. You're not quite enamoured, are you? No, it's not the sort of thing to eat at 10 o'clock in the morning anyway, but what would happen if you put some salt on, do you think?
Enhance the flavour.
Yeah, have a go. Put a bit of salt on. Now, for health reasons, we don't smother our food in salt, but a little sprinkle to season is actually quite helpful.
Very nice.
Yeah, you happier? Yeah, excellent.
It makes a difference.
It makes a difference, doesn't it? Well done, thank you. I think our volunteers can take away their bowls of crisps and have a clap, don't you? Yeah, the choir don't choke on the crisps, but you're very welcome to them. And actually, the good thing is, it doesn't take much salt, does it, to make a difference? Did it take much salt, Julia? No. She's enjoying her crisps. And actually, it doesn't take much effort on our part to be like salt. Jesus was asking his followers to be people who make life a little better for others. That may be by being a good friend. Doesn't having a good friend make your life better? I think so. Maybe you can cheer up somebody who's looking a bit gloomy. Maybe you can walk along the street and smile at somebody. You know, when people smile at you, doesn't that make you feel better? That's being salt. Maybe it's a bit more involved and you can be helpful and supportive of people who need to be made of feeling a bit better or need that practical help. And also you can tell some very bad jokes because I think that does help people to feel better. Be salt. And then Jesus asked a question, didn't he? What good is salt if it's lost its saltiness? It does stop being salty under some circumstances, of course, and then it's thrown out, Jesus says, and trampled underfoot. And actually what he was referring to, we think, is that when salt was discarded, it made kind of like piles, and the Romans used that sort of discarded stuff as part of building their roads. So soldiers would trample on the salty bits of the road. So if we're not being helpful, if we're not being a good friend or a good member of our community or a good person to be around, then Jesus is saying you might just as well lie down and be trampled on. Another important use for salt in the days before there were fridges and freezers was to preserve food, particularly meat and fish. Salt would be rubbed into the surface to preserve it. The doctor, you know, told me to rub my body with salt to fix my condition. Now I'm cured. Salt acts to stop bacteria growing on food. It draws out the moisture, dries it, and creates a very acidic environment, too much for most bacteria. And also flies don't like it when it's like that. So it stops them laying their eggs and stops maggots from eating it. Now, I don't think by being salty, we should be going around killing bugs or be fly deterrents. I think what he did mean was we should preserve what is good in our society. Christian values are being eroded, aren't they? And things like truth and justice and peace need to be upheld these days. Unselfishness and compassion seem lacking sometimes. We can fight evil with God's help, even if only in small ways. You know, one of the important things we can do is that we can model and teach our children and grandchildren, godchildren, nephews, nieces, other young family members, the godly, the Christian way to live. And we can speak out when we see injustice. There was a pony who had to gargle salt because he was feeling a little hoarse. That's the last one, honest. You see, in the time of Jesus, salt was medicinal. It was rubbed into wounds to prevent infection, obviously because it killed bacteria. But it must have been very painful to have the salt rubbed into your wounds, but it would help. And Jesus wants us to be a healing presence in his world. Now, most of us are not doctors, nurses, or paramedics, or like Liz, we heard last week, is a wonderful first responder for the ambulance service. But we can all do something to bring healing into people's lives. And I know also that Celia and Ivan are bringing healing in a different way to mental health issues. It is important, isn't it? And actually, it's lovely to see Maggie here today, because last night I saw Maggie and Gary. Now, some of you will have been praying with me and some others for Gary to be healed. He was taken very seriously ill on holiday about a month ago, wasn't it? And now he's all right. He's had wonderful medical care and the help of God, but also the help of Maggie and all sorts of people and our prayers to make him better. So yes, we can pray. That does bring healing. But sometimes we are called to do something, and it's more than just applying a plaster usually. You know, but when there's division, when people have fallen out and then won't talk to each other, we can try and act as mediators. We can try and help in the process of reconciliation. Lots of people have emotional wounds, maybe caused by bereavement or abuse or rejection or whatever. No, we're not experts, we're not counsellors, but you know, a listening ear can make a tremendous difference. Being somebody people can talk to and turn to. And sometimes too, there are spiritual wounds. Wounds inflicted by the church, wounds inflicted by hearing false teaching about God. Some people don't feel worthy either to approach our God. We can help bring healing through talking about our spiritual journey, about the God we know is a God of love. So Jesus is saying to you and to me, to all of us, you are the salt of the earth. You are valuable, you are precious, you're important. You can make a difference. You can season the life of others. You can preserve or restore what is good. You can help bring healing where it's needed. And Jesus has given us his Spirit to enable us to be salt. Isn't that a privilege? Isn't it a challenge? Amen.